Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 153rd episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thanks very much, everybody out there, for listening. As always, I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substacks.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also file columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal. So go to bostonsportsjournal.com, get a subscription there, and check it all out. Today with me, I have longtime friend and colleague, Jimmy Murphy. James, please tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Well, you can tune into the Eye Test podcast I do with Pierre McGuire every day, Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. live on YouTube. And then you can always get it on the podcast platforms. And you can also find me at RG Media, where I do some writing for them at least twice a week.
Awesome. Check out the writing and check out the podcast. Good stuff from Murph, as always. Also good stuff from our sponsors. So before we get to the podcast itself, let's thank them real quick. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks run your game. And if you need any kind of tickets whatsoever, comedy, theater, sporting events, anything, go to our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Murph, what time is it?
It's game time, buddy.
Game time. That's right. See, Murph knows it's game time, too. We all know it's game time here.
Yep.
Beautiful. All right. 42 points, Murph, at the Christmas break. 5-point cushion for a playoff spot for the Bruins. They're in the playoff structure in the Atlantic Division right now. They've been kind of in and out the last week or so going into Christmas because Tampa Bay kind of goes back and forth with them, and Tampa Bay's got a lot of games in hand on the Bruins, so they may end up passing them at some point when they catch up. But they're in a pretty good spot right now. Columbus is going to be kind of a sneaky game for them, I think, going into Columbus on Friday night, coming out of the break, because they have to fly in this morning, Friday morning. They can't travel on the 26th. They have to wait until the 27th, so they fly in the same day, which they almost never do, skate in Columbus, and then play on Friday night. And Columbus is a team that's in the mix for the wild card. They've been hanging around, and they've been kind of an annoying opponent. So I feel like this is a pretty tough game for them, coming out of the Christmas break, and then having Buffalo on a back-to-back at home right after that. This is a challenging little stretch for a Bruins team that started to show the ability to meet some of these challenges and overcome some of the adversity.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Haggs, because I think a lot of people overlook Columbus. If I was a gambling man and betting on hockey tonight, I'd stay far away from the Bruins. I'd just stay away from this game.
Yep.
I think it's an ultimate trap game right now. Like you said, they had a fly-in today. They haven't had practice in a bit.
Yep.
And also, Columbus notoriously on Friday nights is a pretty rocking place. They usually pack the arena for their Friday night games. You get that. Not that the college kids are there right now because they're on break,
right,
but it's a good atmosphere for the home team on a Friday night, and it's a tough place to play there. And I agree with you. I think they've been a scrappy team all year. I like the direction they're headed in there. I don't think they're going to, when all is said and done, I don't see them in the playoffs, but they're one of those teams that are going to be a thorn in the side of teams like the Bruins who are trying to be in the playoffs or trying to climb up the standings. So yeah, I agree with you. And then looking forward, there's some tough games. I think they could come back tomorrow, and I see them winning on home ice. But after that, the week ahead is going to be a good test. Yeah, exactly.
The Sabres factor is always there.
Yeah, maybe they go on a run. We'll see. But one thing I'm looking at, they have been playing better hockey. And I think it shows when you look at the standings, they're still the only team in a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference with a negative goal differential. They're at negative 14. But, just a week ago, that was at negative 21, Joe. So clearly they've done a good job of buying into Sacco's defensive system and making it work.
They definitely have. I mean, the goal differential thing, let's face it, That's due to 3 blowout losses to Winnipeg, Dallas, and Carolina. Like
That's a great point.
that's basically where their goal differential comes from, the massive goal. But I mean, I guess you could say that about any team with a negative goal differential, is that it's the blowout losses that really hurt them. But essentially, when you look at the Bruins and you look at goal differential, it's 3 blowout losses against good playoff teams that has really put them in that spot. And like I'm with you. I think they're a playoff team. I think they're going to what I've seen out of them lately is they're starting to get used to the system that Joe Sacco wants to play, that he's preaching to them, that the coaching staff is preaching to them. I think they're starting to get comfortable playing the system that he wants, playing defensively the way that they want, offensively, shot volume, funneling pucks, volume, quantity over quality as far as the shots go in the offensive zone, scoring on rebounds, scoring on chaos in front of the net, creating things like that. You're starting to see all that stuff happen and them start to play that way. Like it's been interesting to watch because the way they're playing now and what they're preaching now is so different than what Jim Montgomery wanted that I think it's taken them a little while to really sort of cycle out of that and become the team that they are now. And I think they're starting to get confident and sort of get the instincts to play the way they are now, rather than sort of thinking their way through it or still sort of like shedding some of the stuff that they were doing with Monty, especially offensively. Like the holding on to pucks, the short passing, the playmaking, the trying to get the perfect tic-tac-toe goals and all that stuff, like the stuff that Monty wanted to see out of them. It takes a while to get that out of your system and realize that they want, pretty simple hockey now, which I think for this team and this personnel is better. It's a better fit for the players that they have than trying to make like Trent Frederick and Morgan Geekie playmakers. You know what I mean? Like that's just not, that's not what they're built for. And I really think now they're playing a style that at least suits the personnel that they have and what they are. And, it's about time. Like I don't blame Don Sweeney for the roster that they have, because I think it's a playoff caliber roster, and I think they did the best they could as far as, the free agency, the players that were available, filling needs, all that stuff. But I think I feel like, honestly, since that first year that Monty was the coach, the team that they had was less and less sort of like matching with what he wanted to do and just not a good fit with him as a coach. And I think we saw that progressively over the last couple of years. And finally, they made the move this year. And I think what we're seeing out of this team and the way they're playing is kind of proof of that. And what I wonder and what I ask you is, at what point do we decide that Joe Sacco is the guy? And, maybe he's the long-term guy and he should, you shed the interim tag, you give him the job. And maybe this doesn't happen until after the season's over in the playoffs and all that stuff. Because if I were the Bruins, I would probably wait to see like the whole sort of show this year and see the whole production from all the way through until they, their playoff run has ended to make a decision and to do that. There's no reason not to. But I feel like Joe Sacco is doing some good things here. And I really like his temperament. I like how calm he is on the bench. You don't see him really flipping out or blowing a gasket. Even when the Bruins aren't playing well, he kind of reels them in and reminds them what they're supposed to be doing and who they are. And they get back to basics. And really, they're playing like Bruins hockey. I feel like they've been doing that since Sacco took over, and much more recognizable to what we've seen in the past with this team. So I give a lot of credit. One of my gifts under the Christmas tree for this podcast episode would be just credit to Joe Sacco for doing a really good job and for making the most of an opportunity that came, 10, 11, 12 years after his first gig in Colorado. He was definitely waiting for it and ready for it, and he's doing a good job. And the results are the way that they're playing, and them, like you said, shaving some numbers off the goal differential, the one-loss record, and then being in a playoff spot.
Yeah, Joe, I think it was over the summer I was on with you and Mick Colagio on this podcast, and we were all sort of looking at the roster and looking at Monty and his situation and why he didn't have an extension yet at that point, and saying, something smells in Denmark here. I mean, something was up. We all kind of sensed it, and you looked at that roster, and clearly the focus was size and grind.
Yes,
and that, like you just said, and everything you said was absolutely right. That was not Monty's style. No. He was attack. He was offense. Just all the time, go, go, go. And this roster wasn't suited to his game plan. So, the writing was just so much on the wall that if they didn't get off to a good start, he was going to be gone. And sure enough, we were right. And, this whole situation reminds me, and you just mentioned how Sacco's waited so long for his next shot as a head coach. It reminds me so much of when Cassidy took over for Julian.
Yeah.
And, I just remember having those same conversations with you at that time. Like, something's weird. Why is this roster not catered to how Julian coaches? Why is it starting to look like a different roster for a different coach? And you could see it coming. And sure enough, they hired Cassidy. He got his shot after a long time, just like Sacco.
Yep.
So, it's just kind of this is twice now where Sweeney's kind of wrote this script. And I'm with you. I think Sacco deserves a ton of credit. However, I will say the one thing is I see that I don't know this for a fact. This is me just speculating. So, don't go and say that I reported this. This is just me speculating. I feel like there's a lot of management, hockey ops, direction in play here. I think it's more of a collaborative effort when it comes to Sacco and Sweeney and Neely than it was with Montgomery.
Yes.
And we had heard that we had heard so many reports that there were differences in philosophical approaches between Montgomery and Sweeney, and that was one of the things that led to the coaching change. And now when you see this, it makes sense to me. And I think it's all sort of coming to the surface now. But again, I'm not taking anything away from Sacco. I think I like what you said about how he's been able to calm them down, with the exception of those blowout games you mentioned earlier. But we've seen other games where they've gone down early and they've stuck around and they clawed back in and at least got a point. I think maybe once where we've seen them blow a late lead was that game in Edmonton. But then again, it's Connor McDavid. You give him a chance late, it's going to happen. So I think, it's all come together right now. But another thing that I like what you said too is that the players had to, say, okay, we're not that, we're this.
Yeah.
And they had to admit that to themselves and admit it as a group and say, okay, we need to do what they're telling us to do here. We can't be what we want to be. We're not that, flashy team. We're not that. We're going to be a boring, grind you down team. But on the flip side, that's what usually wins in the playoffs. So that's a good sign.
Yeah. And look, if you wanted to simplify what the Bruins mindset is or what they're trying to do, they're trying to be more like the Florida Panthers. They want more of an aggressive forecheck. They want more of an attack on the defenseman. They want more of a grind you, wear you down kind of a style that is going to be more effective in the playoffs with bigger, faster players, with players that have speed and size. And that will pound you if they catch up to you in the corner when you're retrieving a puck, and will grind and wear you down over the course of a 7-game series. And they want to start playing a little bit more of that style. And that was definitely not Monty, and that was not his style, and that is not the way that he wanted to play. And yeah, I heard the same thing you did. There were differences of opinion. I know for a fact that they did not agree on Matt Poitras getting sent down to Providence. I think there was definitely a disagreement about that when it happened. Probably because Monty felt like Poitras could help them here and was an offensive player and could help them create goals. But organizationally, they felt like the right call for him was to go down to Providence and develop and play minutes and, build up his confidence. And that's exactly what we've seen happen. He had goals in 7 games in the AHL. It was the perfect example of player development where you put a guy down that's really not, doesn't have his mojo and kind of has lost his confidence a little bit at the NHL level and isn't really the player that you thought he was going to be. And he was able to go down to the AHL, play in all situations, play big minutes, and all of a sudden, almost immediately, it happened. Within a couple of games, he started scoring point per game, playmaking, doing all that stuff, and he's exactly the guy you thought he was. And really, I mean, for Poitras, it's showcasing him and how good he is and why he should be viewed on a different level as a 20-year-old player than Fabian Lysell, than Merkulov, than all these other guys. He can dominate in the AHL. What those guys cannot do. He's a legit NHL talent. I think he needs to get bigger. He needs to get more confident offensively and get back to where he was. And he needs to figure out how to operate without putting himself in harm's way too much for hits. And it's hard for him because he's not, I wouldn't call him elusive. I wouldn't call him fast. He's not going to be able to outskate some of those big hits and be able to avoid them with his skating ability, because his skating ability is very average. But I think he needs to figure out a smart way to do that, and he can do that at the AHL level and figure out some elusiveness is slipping out of some of those big hits that he's taking when he gets back to the NHL level. But they disagreed on that. I'm sure. I mean, it would seem like the Tyler Johnson thing maybe they disagreed on too, because he didn't last very long after Monty was gone. Certainly, I think Mark McLaughlin must have been a difference of opinion between Monty and the front office, because, I mean, it was very obvious when McLaughlin gets called up a couple days after Monty gets fired, and he's been pretty regularly in the lineup since then. So I think it is very apparent that there were some differences of opinion between the two sides. And, like, look, I'm sure from Don Sweeney and Cam Neely's perspective and Bruins management, it's like, what has this guy done to really be able to dictate all this stuff to us? You know what I mean? He's been a pretty good regular season coach, hasn't done enough in the playoffs. Really, I hate to say this, but anybody could have coached that team the first year he was here. And
yeah, no, he even said that, Joe.
Like, anybody could have coached that team and got like a great season. Maybe it wouldn't have been record breaking like it was, but like, I kind of still think Patrice Bergeron was sort of the coach of that team, in a lot of respects. So, like, what did he actually do to deserve that kind of clout and deserve, like, a big money, which I'm sure he was holding out for, contract extension? And, like, credit to Monty, right? Like, clearly he knew that St. Louis was going to want him. And he knew that, that was going to be in play and that he had history there. And you don't want to say collusion, but, like, it's funny that you hear the NHL start to talk about, like, looking more seriously into the like back channels or like chatter that's going on before free agents sign, maybe before coaching changes, all of that stuff. Because I just feel like that was a very clear example of like somebody knowing he had something in his back pocket as far as Monty goes when all this stuff was going on. And maybe that played into the Bruins and the way that they played, and the players knowing that was the deal as well, that he wasn't signed and that, there were potential of him going elsewhere. And that played into some of the conflicted sort of like strange things that we saw on the ice and the way the players were operating, is they were sort of like at a loss to know what was going to happen long-term too. And that can be, really unproductive for hockey players, for NHL players, if they don't know that everybody's fully on board and a part of the group and is going to be there for the long term.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think, the guy I actually, when you sit back and you really think about it, the guy I feel the worst for is Drew Bannister. It's like, he's probably like, what the hell? I thought we were in a rebuild and now you just kicked me to the curb. And like you said, he had to probably sense the same thing you just said, that, they were thinking Monty all along. And so he was kind of just a sitting duck as well. And, going back though to what you're saying, like, what did Monty do coaching wise to really dictate a more lucrative contract and long-term contract? I agree with you 100%. And he even said, like, I just had to, like, tell the guys what to do, call the line. I mean, he admitted that it was such an easy team to coach in that year when they broke all those records. But I think last year he did a way better job. I thought he actually coached. I thought he really, in my opinion, exceeded some expectations, getting them to the second round. It looked like they were going to lose to Toronto, and then they end up going 6 games with Florida. That was a grinding series. And, Florida said at the end, I remember Paul Maurice, after they won the Cup, saying that was arguably one of our toughest series other than the Edmonton Oilers one that went 7 games. Yes. So I think, it's ironic that he got the Jack Adams the year before. I mean, obviously he's gonna because of all the points they accumulated, but he had a better coaching job last year. So I thought that was, a little different there. But you're right. I mean, when he came back, look, he was waiting for it to happen. The players are waiting for it to happen. And it was almost like as a group, they were just in this purgatory where they didn't know where things are going to go, but they could sense something was coming. And how do you go out and play? I mean, how do you go out and form an identity when you don't know who your coach is going to be and if that identity is going to have to change all of a sudden again? Yep. So, there are a lot of things that led to it. But right now in the current, they're buying in. And one thing I like too, when I look at this team too, is they're not always leaning on their stars. There's other guys trying to step up, because I think, people will disagree with me and people will say, oh, well, Pastrnak hasn't been himself and he hasn't done this. Well, maybe it's because for a while, Pastrnak had to do everything. He was trying to compensate for other guys not really getting to their point of what their worth is. And I think now that there's more guys doing that, it's easing up the load on the star players like Pastrnak and Marchand, and they're starting to come back to themselves. So, and by the way, too, I don't mind Pastrnak being a playmaker as opposed to just a goal scorer. I like it. I think if they got another winger, it would really be great.
I like it too, to a degree, but it's too frustrating to watch him when he passes up like clear.
That I was just going to agree.
Right?
Yeah,
Like,
I was going to say.
I mean, you can't do that if you're him, and you're really the most gifted guy in this team as far as scoring goals on a team that has a hard time scoring goals. I think there are times, like when it's the right play to make, I absolutely. And I think he and Sako have a good chemistry going, and he can set up Sako quite a bit. And like, that's a good thing. And like, it's clear that he is able to do that and that he should do that. But I think there's also times where he passes up clear shooting chances that are there.
But it's been less lately.
Yeah.
He does it less since the coaching change. I think he's shot more. I'd have to look at the stats.
Especially when it turns into a turnover. You know what I mean? When he passes up a shot, forces a pass, turn over the other way, especially in an odd man situation where it's like, you got to get a shot on net in that situation. Like, you have to be able to at least get something on net. But I agree that he's been better in a lot of respects lately until he ended up getting banged up. And we'll see what happens with that too, coming out of the Christmas break as well. Let's take a pause in the podcast to thank our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super easy. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your pick in less than 60 seconds, and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Join now, because this holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. And there's only a few days left in December, so make sure you get on the Picksmas train right now, my friends. This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the board and selecting Charlie McAvoy with more than 0.5 assists, Jonathan Marchessault with more than 0.5 goals, Cale Makar with more than 0.5 points, which I think is just take it to the bank on that one, Cale Makar.
Yeah, exactly.
Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. You can now win up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS for $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Murph, we've got a couple of questions here from the fans, so we will go over these ones in the second half of the show here. Hi, Joe. I have a comment for your podcast that I hope you can answer. With all the talk recently about Trent Frederick being a trade candidate because he's not producing, I feel there might be a comparison with Nick Foligno after his first year in Boston. Foligno was also well-liked by his teammates and was willing to play a bottom six role if it was best for the team. And both were not afraid to drop the gloves if it might give the team a spark. Don Sweeney had the opportunity to get rid of Foligno after year one, but he didn't because of all the positive intangibles. My question, do you think Trent Frederick might stay in a Bees uniform for the same reasons that Nick Foligno was kept here under his contract? Thanks. I love the podcast, Roger Perry. Now, I think this is an interesting comparison. I hadn't really thought about this one.
Little age difference, though.
Well, there's definitely a little age difference. Yeah. And the one thing I would say to Roger, too, is like, they kept Nick Foligno around because they had him under contract. Like, and there was a coaching change in there too, right? Like he and Bruce Cassidy, I think, did not really get along well. He was another one of those like veteran players that kind of clashed with Bruce Cassidy a little bit. And he had a better year under when he was healthy under Jim Montgomery with that during that loaded season. But like the big question and the big reason why Trent Frederick might get traded and why there's so much talk about him getting traded is this is the last year of his contract. He's going to be a free agent after this year. He's in a totally different situation where I think the Bruins are going through like their calculations right now to try to decide if they want to pay him what he's going to get on the open market as far as term, as far as money. And I said this on the podcast last week, Murph, and I've said this a few times. I'm really starting to get Jake DeBrusk, Torrey Krug vibes with Trent Frederick, where there isn't a ton of chatter about a contract. I don't think I think the Bruins know that they can't afford him and that they don't have the money to sign him, and they don't want to extend themselves to the point to give him what he's going to be able to get somewhere else. And I think Trent Frederick maybe knows this. And I think he kind of, maybe it's St. Louis, maybe it's somewhere else, but I got to imagine that there's a place that's going to give him the contract security that he's never had with the Bruins. You know, give him like a 3, 4, 5 year deal that he's never really had in Boston to have that security. And that's something he mentioned to me when I talked to him about it. I just feel like he's one of those guys that you have to really think about, right? And I think the Bruins maybe need to change their thinking when it comes to an asset like Trent Frederick or Jake DeBrusk or Torrey Krug that you know is a valuable asset that can get you things in return at the trade deadline. Don't you have to think about trading them and getting that value back instead of just letting them ride off into the sunset after the season is over and sign somewhere else if you know that's going to happen, especially with the team like the Bruins this year, where they must know by now that they're a playoff team, but they're probably like a 1-2 round playoff team. It doesn't feel like this is a team that's capable of a deep run. They're sort of transitioning to who they're going to be as a contender. And I don't think it's going to be this year unless they go lights out in the second half. And maybe this is the perfect time to flip off a guy like Frederick and get some value in return at the trade deadline.
Yeah, two things, and I totally agree with you. Keep an eye on the Blues. I think they'd be first in line to acquire him or sign him should he go to market. But don't forget, Joe, you listed, DeBrusk, Krug. We go as far back with Don Sweeney as Louis Eriksson. That was another guy that they didn't move at the deadline. That really, I think they regret now when, in hindsight's 2020. But
they made the right call with Louis Eriksson, though, right? Like there was several players like him that really didn't do much after they I think they made the right call with Torrey Krug, even though they missed.
No, I'm not saying not bring him back. I'm saying they should have moved him at the deadline. I don't think they ever had an intention of signing him.
Yes.
So I'm with you. Like if you're more, let's say if you're more than 65% sure that you're not going to bring this guy back, trade him.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, why sit on it? Like you said, he can bring you assets, get something. Don't just let him walk. And I think if Don Sweeney does this again, he's really going to get it from the fan base. Like they're going to be like, look, this is a pattern with you and it needs to stop. So I'm with you. But the one thing I don't get about not wanting to bring him back isn't Trent Frederick, if he could get to his potential, is he not just the type of player that now fits in with the style of play that we just discussed, that grinding, heavy hockey type style? I think he would be the perfect guy to fit into that. So it's like, why wouldn't they want to bring him back? Or maybe they just think that he's not going to ever get to that guy that they thought he would be when they drafted him. I don't know. It's an interesting situation. But as far as the trade rumors go, I've been told pretty much flat out that it wasn't them shopping him, more as it was teams interested in just, asking Sweeney, what are you going to do with this guy? Right. So, I just don't want fans to think that they're out there saying, we don't want Frederick, so give us your best offer. That could have changed. This was a month ago when I was told that, but for right now, it's been more teams looking into it. And you wonder when that story first surfaced, I think it was Friedman who reported it first. You wonder how much the agent had to do with it too. Yeah. I mean, he's probably like, look, they're not talking to me. I got to do something to spark up the talks here, whether it's talks on a new contract or whether it's to get my client to a team that will sign him. So it's definitely something we're going to have to keep an eye on in the second half.
Yeah, no doubt. I think Weeksy was another guy that very early on had said something about Trent Frederick and trades too. It was both Elliott and Weeksy were both, I think, on that one. But had sort of, it was kind of nebulous the way that they worded it or mentioned it to your point, where I don't think they made clear that the Bruins weren't shopping this player, but there was interest. And other teams were asking about him. And of course they would. Like, the thing about Frederick is I think he's a guy that I'm not sure he's ever going to be exactly what you would hope him to be or want him to be. I don't know if he's ever going to get to that place, but the potential is there for him to be something that every team wants.
He's like a tier 2 power forward. Yeah. He's not a tier 1.
No,
you know what I mean?
But teams think they're going to be able to turn him into a tier 1 power forward because the size is there, because the toughness is there, because he's shown the skill to be, a 20-goal scorer somewhere around there. Like the elements, the pieces are all there for him to be something more than he is right now. But I just don't know that he can put it all together consistently to be that guy all the time. And I think we've seen enough of a body of work for him now that the Bruins have maybe made that determination. There's a ceiling to who and what he's going to be. And maybe he's reaching a point where the ceiling is not going to match the salary and the contract after this season. And that's when you really have to, the Bruins have done a good job of moving on from those kind of players. And I feel like maybe that's where they are with Frederick, but extremely popular. Love the kid. I think he's a great kid. It's nice having him around. He turned himself into a very good NHL player. Like they're going to miss his toughness and his
He's
presence.
a good student in the game too. That's what I like about him.
Yeah.
Like he really appreciates the nuances and loves to talk hockey.
Yeah.
Like so,
and they're going to miss him if he's gone. There's no doubt about it. Like on the ice, off the ice, all of it. But I think this will be a business decision with him, and it'll be.
It might be better up for him.
Yeah.
Maybe he just needs to find the right fit. You never know.
Yeah. All right. This from Stephen Bentley. Any timeline on Hampus Lindholm? I have not heard anything about him returning. I have not seen him.
He looked good getting engaged.
What's that?
He looked pretty healthy getting engaged.
Well, I was going to say, like, there's been talk about, like, it's a broken kneecap, all this other stuff. He was down on one knee getting engaged during the Christmas break, and he was playing Santa for Pasternak's kid. So he seems to be getting healthy, and at least he's out and about, and I didn't see any cast or crutches or any of that stuff. So
exactly.
So he's definitely on the comeback trail. I have not heard any word yet, but like, think about how much better they're going to be when he comes back based on the way that they've played in his absence, where I felt like he was probably their best defenseman consistency wise when he got hurt.
Totally agree. And I'm so glad you said that.
He comes back and he's going to really add something.
Yeah. I don't think he gets enough respect, honestly, in this fan base. Haggs, I don't know what it is. I think people thought when he came in and they look at his contract, maybe he's got to be, a complete superstar, or should be more like McAvoy. But, they missed him at times. But thankfully, the way they've been able to buy into the system and be more responsible defensively has helped compensate for his loss. But it's only going to help when he comes back. The one thing I wondered, too, though, when he got hurt, in terms of a timetable and when he'll be back, the thing I always wondered was, when they named those teams early in the month for the Four Nations, right? A lot of those GMs, when they were doing their press conferences, listed off some injured players like, hey, if the X, Y, and Z get healthy, we're going to call on them too. They'll probably be added to the roster. And that wasn't one of the guys that Sweden mentioned at all. And when that happened, I was like, do they know something we don't? Like, do they know that he's going to be out even up until then or past that point in mid-February?
Right.
But now, like you said, I mean, you see him, he looks healthy right now. He looks like he's on the comeback. So maybe he's going to be coming back earlier than they expected.
Yeah, maybe. Or, maybe the Bruins, it's like too close to when he is going to come back and they don't want to
Yeah, maybe they told him, don't even think about it. That's a good point.
He just cleared the decks. That could be as well. All right, let's take a break again to talk about our friends at Game Time. If you're looking for tickets, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruins tickets, but also if you're looking for the tickets to the Celtics or even comedy or concert tickets as well. And the Celtics played an awesome game with the 76ers on Christmas Day, so you want to check that stuff out. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite team play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The game of the week for this week that would make would have made an outstanding Christmas stocking stuffer is the December 28th showdown between the Bruins and the Sabres at the Garden on Saturday night, right after the Christmas holiday. That'll be a fun one. You won't get to see Todd Angeli sing the Christmas hits like you did December 23rd against the Washington Capitals, but the first game after Christmas is also a fun time as well. The super deal is $229 for seventh row loge seats, which is pretty great value for Bruins tickets at that game. Some great features at Game Time: priority Game Time picks. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concerts, theater, etc. All in pricing, you toggle this feature and it shows you the total up front with no surprise fees at the checkout. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. What's better than that? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Murph?
It is game time, brother.
All right. Oh, by the way, they're playing the Blue Jackets.
Yes, I didn't want to correct, but when you did it again, there, I gotta tell you, it's a home and home with the Blue Jackets.
I thought they were playing the Sabres.
Yeah, Sabres, Blue Jackets.
All right. So pretend I said the Blue Jackets instead of Sabres. I've been saving Sabres for like weeks now. All right.
Yeah.
Here's a question from Dan Brunet. Hey, Joe, great job on the pod. Question for you. Why is the PA announcer at the Garden so slow to announce the goals? This is an interesting one. Sometimes he's like 2 to 3 minutes later in the game before announcing them. I look at the other rinks in the league, and the goals are announced much quicker after being scored. Hope you have an answer for me. Thanks. And that's from Dan Brunet. I got to admit, the PA announcer's fairly new. It's the last couple of years he's been there.
Right.
That probably has something to do with it. But Murph, you have any insight into this?
Yeah, but even like with veteran ones too, you know what happens sometimes, Joe, is sometimes a penalty or another goal happens so fast that they don't have a chance to get it out there. Yeah, and so sometimes it's out of the PA announcer's control. But I do think that this current one is still learning on the fly. So give him a little time, be patient with him.
Yeah.
That should be the least of the worries now, right?
It gets there eventually. And I do think there's also, it seems like these days with the NHL and the off-ice officials, there's a lot of back and forth between the league and the off-ice officials as far as who gets the assists, who gets the goals. And it seems to take them some time to officially decide like who has scored, who's assisted and all that. And they review it multiple times. And I think that can be part of the reason there's a delay as well. Is just the natural procession of refs announcing it to the scoring table, and then that going to the league, and the league reviewing it, and the off-ice guys reviewing it, and then everybody making sure it's official before tossing it out there. But I think it's a combination of the PA guy is fairly new. I think it's a combination of like the way things work with the league now and the operations crew at the Garden. And I think it's around the league. I would have to watch more games in other markets and in other buildings
really pay attention.
To determine that it's different. I think it's pretty much the same uniformly around the league, where there's a delay before it gets announced as a goal, because the league has some involvement now in making sure they get everything right before they announce it in the rink.
Imagine being that guy too when there's like 3 goals in a minute and a half. And you're just trying to get it out there. You're like taking the notes, trying to get it out, and like, whoa. So
yes,
it happens.
It does. And that's, that's when it comes fast and furious. The Bruins have to hope they have more flurries of goals like that.
Yeah, exactly.
The action comes flying out. All right, Murph, thank you very much for joining us. Let's thank our sponsors again real quick. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks run your game. Also, if you're looking for tickets, especially the December 28th game between the Bruins and the Columbus Blue Jackets at the Garden as part of a home-and-home series that is going to be sneaky tough. We talked about that before.
Yeah. By the way, why are they doing home and homes with out of division teams?
Yeah, I don't know.
If you're going to do a home and home, give me it in the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, give me the Canadians. Give me a home and home with the Montreal Canadiens. Try to stir up the rivalry a little bit. Anyway, December 28th at home is going to be Columbus Blue Jackets. So if you want to get tickets to that game, go to Game Time, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. But download the app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first Game Time purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it, Murph?
It is game time, Haggs.
Game time. All right, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you had a great Christmas. Hope you have an excellent New Year's. Murph, thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
All right.
Happy holidays.
You too, bud. Happy holidays. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you at the rink.